And this is the sound motion unit from the Arc Ultra itself. You haven't taken a closer look inside the Arc Ultra, and this is what it looks like. And I have this in my hands. Now, there are many videos on the Arc Ultra on the internet, and if you scour YouTube, you'll see so many in recent months. Now, it goes to show how popular the Arc Ultra really is at this point, but there are plenty of things that people have not uncovered about the Arc Ultra, which I'm going to tell you the 20 things about the Arc Ultra that you might not already know. Now, there are things that we already know well, and we know it sounds better. Sonos says it's revolutionary and it changes everything. And from the outside, all right, not this unit inside here, we will be talking about the physical characteristic, how it looks on the outside. It's slightly slimmer, shorter, and a little bit less deep, but it is longer overall. And as a whole, it looks a lot sleeker. Now, the new volume control schema follows what is on the Era 100 and the Era 300, so that is also new to the Arc Ultra. On the inside, there are a couple of things that happen. The memory has been increased from 1 GB to 2 GB, and the storage has increased from 4 GB to 8 GB. CPU-wise is still a quad-core, except that the clock speed is now from 1.5 GHz to 1.9 GHz. Now, we all know that it also connects via Bluetooth 5.3 now, which was not on the original Arc. Now, Wi-Fi is also supporting 5 GHz at the moment on the Arc Ultra. Previously on the Arc Gen 1, it was only supporting 2.4 GHz. And we know it sounds better. Why? Because of the 14 drivers, one of which is this sound motion driver that I have in my hands right here. And for those of you on Android, you now finally get TruePlay. Now, there are a couple of things that you may not actually know about Sonos Arc Ultra, which Sonos has not been entirely very clear, and they are probably not that obvious when it comes to telling you about these 20 things that I'm going to talk about. Now, upfront summary, I'm going to put it right up here. You can freeze the screen, read it, and then skip the rest of the video. That's fine with me, but I wish you could support this channel by subscribing or watching the rest of the video, including the ads on this video, and that's how I keep the channel running. I've kind of grouped the top 20 things that you probably didn't know about the Arc Ultra in this particular order. Well, I'm just going to go through the not so obvious one. First point is that the Arc Ultra now costs $999. It is $100 more than before. I would say that they are running some kind of discount on the original Arc Gen 1, so it could be cheaper by $200 US or so, depending on where you are, and some of them will be trying to clear the stocks for the older one. So if you are happy with the Arc, then maybe you can save $200 and get the Arc Gen 1. The next thing is that Sonos has been coy about this. They are saying they launched a new wall mount for the Arc Ultra. Can you use the older wall mount? Yes, you can. You can refer to the video that I have made right up here previously on whether you can use the older wall mount or not. Will it work? Will it mount? Yes, it will, but I probably got to do a little bit of testing to see whether the magnet is still aligned in the right places to activate the reduced bass mode when it is wall mounted. Now, next I will move on to the drivers and the amplification, which is core to what a soundbar is, right? So the Arc Ultra has 14 drivers, but it has 15 amplifiers. So you may not know this. So why 15 amplifiers? Because the amplifiers, there are 2 of them, which is being used to drive this one unit. I'll talk a little bit more about the sound motion driver in just a little bit, but the tweeters, they have actually increased the number of tweeters from 3 to 7. So the tweeters are replacing, the additional 4 tweeters are replacing the mid-bass drivers, which used to be for the directional audio, the 2 heights channel, as well as 2 side firing channels. So those used to be mid-bass drivers, they are now tweeters. So the number has increased from 3 to 7. Now, in terms of the mid-bass drivers, they have reduced it slightly from 8 to 6. Now, all these 6 drivers, the mid-bass drivers, are firing front channels, right? The center, the left, and the right. So each of these channels will have 2 mid-bass drivers. Now, the mid-bass drivers are also smaller. The Arc Gen 1 used to use elliptical shaped mid-bass drivers, which covers a little bit more area, so it's able to push out more sound. But now, because of the sound motion unit, they have to reduce the size of the mid-bass drivers to slightly smaller, and they are circular, and they are still able to fit 6 of them. Now, these 6 drivers are split across the LCR, which is the left, center, right channels on the Arc Ultra, and 2 for each of these channels, both facing forward. Now the left and the right channel, like I said, it already gets 2 mid-bass drivers, so it actually produces more presence in the bass department, especially for the front stage. Now the sound motion driver, which I said I'll talk about, it actually has 2 drivers. So there's one driver here. This is a driver. I'm gonna show you. This actually moves up and down, and on the flip side, on the flip side, there's also another driver. Now, these 2 drivers are being powered by 4 motors. So if you take a closer look, there are motors here, here, and at the basically at the 4 corners, right? So the 2 amplifiers are actually meant to drive this one sound motion unit. So Sonos markets this as one driver, the sound motion driver, but effectively there are 4 motors inside this driver. Now, usually for speakers, there's one motor behind the diaphragm, so it drives once, right? In the Arc Ultra's sound motion unit, there are 4 motors driven by 2 amplifiers, right? So we can imagine that 2 of them are in parallel and the other 2 were in series. So this actually helps drive the 2 diaphragms, the 2 woofers, right? Which is in one sound motion unit. Now, because of the sound motion unit being able to produce lower bass, the crossover from the Sonos Arc, when it is paired with a sub, has actually changed slightly. It used to be about 110 Hz or so, and from my testing and verification with Sonos, it has dropped down to 80. I know some channels are saying it's about 70, but thereabouts, right? So the crossover has dropped from about 110 to 80, which means to say more bass is being produced by the soundbar itself because of the sound motion unit, and your subs actually do a little bit less work between the 80 to 110 Hz, which means to say it can actually do a lot more work between the 20 to the 80 Hz region. Now, throughout the Sonos Arc Ultra, if you strip the inside, maybe I'll just put up some pictures right here, you will notice that what used to be grills on the Sonos Arc is now replaced by waveguides. So waveguides are basically, they're just shaped fins that will redirect the sound, or rather direct the sound to the relevant directions, so that you get a more encompassing kind of soundstage, which is apparent when you test out the Arc Ultra. The directional sounds are a lot better. It is more encompassing. You get a lot more presence in terms of the surround feel. Now, in terms of sound adjustment, now Sonos has promised TruePlay for Android. Now, this is actually, the quick TruePlay is not the full-blown TruePlay where you take your iPhone and you walk around the room waving it around. This TruePlay for Android, it can be activated, but it uses the onboard mic on the Sonos Arc Ultra to listen out to the waves that are being played. Now, it is slightly different, right? Because it's only one position. The mic is where the Arc Ultra is. You cannot actually determine music like the full TruePlay using the iPhone, where you are able to sit at your main listening position and it is actually listening out to the sounds coming from all around the room, and you are able to wave the phone in the stage 2 of the full TruePlay. When you walk around the room, it measures the sound at different parts of the room. So the TruePlay, while it's available for Android, it is the quick TruePlay, which is similar to what you get on the Era 100 and the Era 300 when they say that those Era speakers supports TruePlay. Now, the other thing about sound for the Sonos Arc Ultra is the speech enhancement. It now has 3 levels, right? Level 2 being equivalent to what the original sound enhancement, speech enhancement is on the original Arc. Now, level 1 is slightly subdued, and level 3 really pulls back all the other sound frequencies and focus on the dialogue. So if you go to the Arc Ultra, you now have this flexibility to choose between 3 levels of speech enhancement. Now, I would say that I never really had a problem with the Sonos Arc and the Arc Ultra. Basically, even if I turn off the speech enhancement, I'm still able to hear the dialogue properly. So I'm not sure about you. Maybe in the next video, I'll recommend some movies where you can try that out for yourself, right? Because I did rewatch some of the movies when the Arc Ultra came out. There are also a few things that I want to talk about what Sonos quietly dropped from the Sonos Arc Ultra when they launched it. Now, the Sonos Arc Ultra, you can do dual subs, right? but only with sub Gen 3 as well as the sub 4. You cannot dual sub with any other subs before the sub Gen 3. Now on the original ARC or on any other home theater products that Sonos has made so far, you only need to have one sub Gen 3, and the other sub can be any generation of sub except the sub mini, of course. But with the Sonos ARC Ultra, you can only dual pair subs with Gen 3 as well as the sub 4. Now, the other very important point that you have to take note of is that it doesn't work with all speakers as surrounds anymore. Now, they have dropped support for the Play 1s, the Play 3s, and the Play 5s, right? As well as the Symphonics Gen 1 speakers. They cannot be used as surrounds on the ARC Ultra anymore. So do take note if you are using one of these speakers on your original soundbar or the original home theater product from Sonos, you can no longer use these as the surround. So by moving from the ARC Gen 1 to the ARC Ultra, and if you're using the Play series, you may have to buy new speakers as well. Well, it does work with the Sonos One, which is the previous generation before the Era 100. So if you are with the Sonos One, you are still good. Now, the other thing that Sonos has sneakily dropped away from the ARC Ultra is the lack of Google Assistant. Google Assistant is no longer supported. We know that Google and Sonos are no longer friends after a $100 million tiff. So I would say that, well, if you are dependent on Google Assistant, maybe use your phone or use another Google Smart Assistant. I think, what is that? The Nest Hub. Yeah, that works. The other thing that Sonos has dropped away from the ARC Ultra is the optical adapter. So you no longer get the optical adapter. You used to get it for kind of like a free. It was in the box before, but now you no longer get it. So if you need that, you got to buy it now. But nobody's going to buy an ARC Ultra to use an optical adapter, right? Because optical adapter, that channel only supports 5.1. Now, the last section, I'll focus on the day-to-day usability of it. Now, I mentioned that the Wi-Fi has been upgraded, so it supports 5G Wi-Fi versus only 2.4G on the Sonos ARC original version, the Gen 1. The ARC Ultra supports 5G as well as 2.4G. So you are still able to use on the older networks, but this is actually better connectivity. I've never had any problems with connectivity on the ARC Ultra since I got it about a month back. Now, the other thing is the join button. There's no longer a join button on the back panel. It is being replaced by the Bluetooth button. Now, the join button, I don't think there's a need for it anymore because there's still the audio pin and there's still the NFC, which you have to tap. I think it's on the sub 4 that you can use NFC. Now, why the join button, right? Because it doesn't actually initiate a join process. You actually need to use the S2 app to start to add speakers. Well, the join button is so that nobody can actually, from your neighbor or from outside, try to set up your speaker, and they actually need physical access to your soundbar. So my neighbor next door won't be able to add my speaker to their network. So that's why the join button. But because there's now NFC and there's now pin, the audio pin, and the audio pin is not actually very loud. So if they're next door, the phone won't be able to pick it up to actually start the process of pairing. So the join button, you don't need it anymore. But there is a Bluetooth button for you to join Bluetooth connectivity, for you to set up the Sonos ARC Ultra as Bluetooth speaker on your mobile phone. Now, the other thing is that the mic switch. The mic switch is now an actual physical switch. Now, on the ARC Gen 1, the mic switch, well, it's not really a mic, well, it is a mic switch, right? You activate it and it starts to listen for your Google Assistant or your Sonos Voice. But now there is actually a physical switch for it. Why? Because now the mic is required for TruePlay for Android, the quick TruePlay, right? So both are independent. There's also another switch that will turn on and off the voice assistant. So that's how it's being configured on the ARC Ultra. Now, the mic switch is actually hidden on the back of the soundbar. So if your soundbar is not positioned where you can readily access it, then you have to remember one thing. So this is a tip for you. The mic switch, when you push it upwards, it is on. When you pull it downwards, it is off, right? So remember that. That is how you change it without physically looking at it. Now, the last thing I have, right? I've gone through 20 points already. This is bonus. the Sonos Arc Ultra is way louder than the Sonos Arc at any given volume. So I would say if you are thinking about upgrading and you want to consider whether it's worth upgrading over the Arc Gen 1, then you might want to check out this video which I put up here. Or if you want to pair it with a sub and a woofer and you wonder whether it makes a difference between the Gen 3 and the sub 4, then you check out this video. Otherwise, peace out and I'll see you in my next video.